My name is Marley Kent. I'm 34 years old now, but the moment that shaped everything about my life happened when I was 10. It was raining the way it only rains in Oregon, not dramatic, not loud, just steady and cold, like the sky had decided to be patient with your misery. My parents' car pulled up in front of my grandparents' old wooden house in Eugene. The paint peeling, the porch boards warped from decades of moisture. The sedan was already struggling before it stopped, coughing like it wanted to quit right there. My mother turned around in her seat and smiled at me. That smile would haunt me for years. "Just a few months, honey," she said. "We'll be back once everything's sorted." I believed her. Because when you're 10, you believe what you're told, especially by the people who are supposed to protect you. They unloaded my small suitcase. It was pink, scuffed on the corners, barely big enough to hold a few sweaters and my school notebooks. Then they drove away. I stood on that porch, rain soaking through my sneakers, watching the red taillights disappear down the gravel road until there was nothing left but gray. That was the last time I ever waited for them. The front door opened slowly behind me. My grandfather Amos and my grandmother Nadine stepped out, wordless. They didn't ask questions. They didn't explain anything. They simply took my cold hands in theirs and led me inside, like this was the most natural thing in the world. And just like that, my childhood ended, and something quieter, harder, and far more permanent began. Nobody ever mentioned my parents again. At first, I kept asking. After a few weeks, I stopped. Life didn't explode. It didn't collapse either. It just moved forward. The first morning in that house smelled like wet pine and slightly burned toast. Grandma Nadine burned toast every single day, and Grandpa Amos pretended not to notice. They raised me without speeches. Grandpa Amos believed in tools, not advice. Grandpa Nadine believed in systems, not sympathy. One afternoon, Grandpa Amos dragged a heavy beige desktop computer from the back room and dropped it onto the kitchen table while I was eating cereal. "It's slow," he said, plugging it in, "but it works." That was it. No encouragement, no pressure. Just a humming fan and a blinking cursor waiting for me. Grandma Nadine handled everything else. She taught me how to stretch ground beef with oatmeal so it lasted all week, how to fold fitted sheets into perfect squares, how to count change twice before handing it to a cashier. Every dollar I earned from mowing lawns, collecting bottles, babysitting went into a glass jar on top of the fridge. She never praised me out loud, but I saw the way her mouth curved upward every time the jar got heavier. At night, I climbed the narrow stairs to the attic room that became mine. The single window faced the forest. Rain tapped on the roof like someone learning how to type. That's when I found coding forums. I stayed up until my eyes burned, teaching myself HTML, then Python, then whatever came next. The house slept quietly around me. Occasionally, I'd hear Grandpa Amos walking to the bathroom, or Grandma Nadine closing her bedroom door. They never told me to stop. When I was 15, a local fishing forum paid me $8,000 for a small app that predicted river levels using public weather data. I printed the PayPal confirmation and slid it across the breakfast table. Grandma Nadine read it twice, folded it carefully, dropped the entire amount into a new glass jar. She labeled it in her neat handwriting, "Marley's Future." Grandpa Amos nodded once and kept eating his oatmeal. That money bought a second-hand laptop with a cracked corner, then a better one, then books that arrived in brown cardboard boxes. I built tools, weather trackers, inventory apps, anything people would pay for. Every check went straight into the jar. Grandma Nadine started adding her own money from selling homemade jam at the Saturday market. The jar moved from the fridge to a shelf in the living room, where all of us could see it growing. Grandpa Amos never asked what I planned to do with it. When the old desktop finally died, he drove me to a salvage yard so I could pull parts from dead machines. On the way home, he said the only thing about money I ever heard him say, "Don't spend it on things that rust." By 17, the attic was full of cables and blinking lights. Some nights, Grandpa Amos sat in the rocking chair by the window and watched me type for hours. He never interrupted, just rocked slowly until he fell asleep. I graduated high school online, not because I was lazy, but because I was already earning more than most teachers in town. The jars stayed untouched. When I turned 18, Grandma Nadine added a second jar, college or whatever comes next. I never opened either one. I already knew. By 19, I walked out of the University of Oregon with one laptop and zero regrets. The garage behind the wooden house became something else entirely. And the people who had abandoned me, they hadn't disappeared forever. They were just waiting. By 19, I wasn't pretending anymore. I walked out of the University of Oregon with one backpack, one laptop, and zero regrets. No dramatic goodbye. No speech about finding myself. I just logged out of my student email, returned a library book I never finished, and went home. Home was still the old wooden house. The jars on the shelf hadn't been touched. By then, I was already running freelance security audits for local businesses, small clinics, accounting firms, a credit union that still stored passwords in a spreadsheet named final.xlsx. I fixed problems quietly. I billed fairly. I delivered fast. That's how I met Ethan and Maya, two friends from school who were just as tired of fixing other people's broken code as I was. "We should stop patching leaks," Ethan said one night, sitting on the concrete floor of Grandpa Amos's garage. "We should build the dam." So we did! We pushed Grandpa Amos's 1,978 Ford pickup to one side, rolled out old rugs, ran extension cords from the kitchen, and called it headquarters. We named the company Secure Nest. It started as a simple endpoint detection tool for small hospitals, places that couldn't afford enterprise-level cybersecurity but still needed protection because patient data doesn't care how big your budget is. We worked nights, weekends, holidays. Grandma Nadine never complained. Every afternoon at exactly 5:30, she walked out back carrying a cast-iron pot, chili, lasagna, chicken soup, enough food to feed 8 people who hadn't seen sunlight in days. She never asked about valuations. She never asked about burn rate. She just made sure nobody passed out from low blood sugar. One Thursday morning, Grandpa Amos found me asleep on the garage floor next to a whiteboard covered in diagrams. He didn't wake me. Instead, he studied the numbers I'd scribbled in the corner. 87,000 in pre-orders. 3 regional clinics. 2 days later, he disappeared. When he came back, he slid a cashier's check across the folding table we used as a desk. It was the proceeds from selling a 5-acre parcel his father had left him near Cottage Grove. "Interest-free," he said. "Pay me back whenever." That check paid for our first real server rack. It paid for 6 months of cloud credits. It paid for time. We released version 1 in the fall of 2021. By spring 2022, we raised a small seed round from angels in Portland, people who liked that we were profitable on day 1. Revenue doubled every quarter. Insurance companies, school districts, credit unions. Anyone who needed security without Silicon Valley pricing started calling. The garage got too small, so we rented the floor above a bike shop downtown, but we kept the folding table. None of us wanted to jinx the luck. In the summer of 2023, Forbes called. They wanted to feature me in their 30 under 30 list. The photographer came to Eugene and insisted on shooting the cover on the porch of the old wooden house. Grandpa Amos and Grandma Nadine sat in their rocking chairs behind me. The headline read, "The Quiet Millionaires of the Pacific Northwest." That same quarter, Secure Nest crossed $28 million in annual recurring revenue. The first thing I did wasn't a car. It wasn't a vacation. I bought the empty lot next door and built a single-story house with wide hallways, heated floors, and a kitchen big enough for Grandma Nadine to cook for an army if she wanted. They moved in the day the certificate of occupancy was signed. But every Friday night, they still drove back to the old house to sleep in their original bedroom. "The new mattress is too soft," Grandpa Amos said. I never argued. By 31, I learned something important. Success doesn't always feel loud. Some days, it just feels like coming home to the smell of pine and burnt toast. Only now, the toast comes from an Italian machine that costs more than Grandpa Amos's first truck. The jars were gone, replaced by direct deposits. They never checked. They didn't need to. They had raised someone who understood the difference between money and security. One Tuesday morning in early spring, a black SUV I didn't recognize pulled into the gravel driveway. 3 people stepped out. I knew them instantly. Tate Kent, Zara Kent, And my younger brother Blaze, 22, fresh out of UCLA, dressed like Oregon, was a fashion emergency. Zara rushed forward first and wrapped me in a hug that felt rehearsed. "My baby," she said. "Look how grown you are." Tate smiled from a step behind her. "We saw you on Forbes," he said quickly. "We're so proud." Blaze barely looked up from his phone. "Hey sis, I invited them inside only because the neighbors were watching." Grandma Nadine was at the senior center. Grandpa Amos was in town buying mower blades. The house was quiet. Zara touched the couch cushions like she was estimating the price. Small talk lasted exactly 4 minutes. Then Tate leaned forward. "Your mother and I have had some business setbacks. Real estate. Market crash. A condo development in Riverside. Foreclosure." Then he said it. "Securist is doing incredible. $28 million in revenue. That's life-changing money. We're family. We thought maybe you could help us get back on our feet." Blaze finally put his phone down. "Family helps family," he said. He talked about starting a clothing line, streetwear, sustainability, just a couple $100,000 to launch. I listened. Then I asked one question. "Why now?" Zara didn't hesitate. "Because you're our daughter." I stood up. "You have 10 minutes to finish your coffee and leave." My voice didn't shake. It hadn't shaken since I was 10 years old watching taillights disappear. They left in 9. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. Because when people believe they're entitled to your success, they don't walk away quietly. I thought telling them to leave would be enough. I was wrong. For the next 3 weeks, my phone never stopped. Emails from Tate, long, carefully written messages about family, responsibility, and second chances. Voicemails from Zara always late at night, always crying, always asking how I could be so cold after everything they sacrificed. They called from numbers I didn't recognize. Work phones, old burners. Then Blaze took a different route. The day after they left, he posted a 10-slide Instagram story. The caption read, "When your millionaire sister forgets where she came from." He used childhood photos from California Christmas mornings I was never part of, screenshots of my Forbes article. By midnight, people I hadn't spoken to since high school were in my DMs. A local Eugene parenting group turned it into a debate about ungrateful adult children. I didn't respond once. Then, one Thursday night at 11:30 p.m., the motion sensor light snapped on. Tate was standing at the front gate in the rain, holding a manila envelope and shouting my name, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I watched him on the security feed for 30 seconds. Then I called the non-emergency police line. 2 officers arrived within 8 minutes. They spoke to him calmly, took the envelope he kept waving, and told him to leave or be cited for trespassing. The envelope contained printed bank statements and a handwritten letter begging for $500,000 just to breathe again. That was the moment something inside me shut completely. I blocked every number, every email, every social account. The next morning, I changed my phone number and gave the new one to exactly 3 people. Grandpa Amos, Grandma Nadine, and my COO. The silence that followed felt like the first full breath after being underwater. A week later, they showed up again. This time, I didn't invite them in. We stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Grandma Nadine taught me how to count change twice. Tate spoke first. "We didn't raise you to be this heartless." That sentence did something to me. I set my coffee down slowly and looked straight at him. "You didn't raise me at all." Zara started crying immediately. "That's not fair," she said. "We were young. We were drowning. We thought we were doing what was best for you." Blaze scoffed. "You're acting like you were abandoned on the street. You had grandparents. You were fine." I turned to him. "You think being left behind doesn't count if someone else picks up the pieces?" Silence. Then Tate leaned forward, his voice sharp now. "You owe us. Without us, you wouldn't even exist." That was it. The breaking point. I felt calm, dangerously calm. "You're right," I said. "I wouldn't exist without you. But the woman standing in front of you, you didn't build her." Zara shook her head. "You're being cruel." "No," I said. "I'm being honest, and honesty feels cruel when it doesn't benefit you." Blaze muttered, "Unbelievable," under his breath. I stepped closer. You don't get to rewrite my life just because it turned out profitable. Tate's face darkened. So, that's it? He snapped. You're really throwing us away? I met his eyes. You did that first. The room went still, not frozen. Not silent, but heavy, like gravity had doubled. I opened the front door. This conversation is over, I said. You need to leave. And if you come back again, I will treat it as harassment. Zara looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. Blaze stared at the floor. Tate stood last. You're going to regret this, he said. I nodded. I already survived worse. They left without another word. That night, I sat on the porch with Grandpa Amos and Grandma Nadine. The rain came down soft and steady. Grandma Nadine didn't ask questions. She just handed me a blanket. I realized then that closure doesn't come from apologies. It comes from choosing where your energy goes next. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. Once the noise stopped, the truth became very simple. People who take never learn how to build. And people who build don't need to take. Tate and Zara didn't disappear overnight. They kept trying for a while indirectly, quietly, the way people do when they've lost leverage but haven't accepted it yet. Mutual friends reached out. A former business partner of theirs just wanted to reconnect. Someone tagged me in a vague post about forgiveness and family values. I didn't respond. Within 6 months, the black SUV was gone. Public records showed the rest of their credit cards sent to collections. The leased cars returned. Addresses changed. They moved the way people do when they run out of options. Smaller apartments, fewer appearances, quieter lives. Blaze deleted everything within 48 hours of the police visit. All the posts, all the captions, all the comments. I heard through a mutual friend that he moved out of the apartment his parents had been paying for and took a night shift job stocking shelves in Riverside. He never reached out again. And I didn't chase him, because closure doesn't require contact. It requires acceptance. With that chapter closed, I turned toward the only two people who had never asked for anything. I booked first-class tickets to Maui for Grandpa Amos and Grandma Nadine's 65th wedding anniversary, even though they insisted Coach was perfectly fine. We stayed 10 days on the North Shore in a quiet house where the loudest sound at night was waves hitting black lava rock. Grandpa Amos fished every morning. Grandma Nadine collected shells and turned them into wind chimes that still hang on their porch. Back home, I scheduled full physicals at the best clinic in Portland. Every test came back better than expected. The cardiologist laughed and said, "Whatever she's been cooking, don't stop." I paid for hearing aids that let Grandpa Amos hear birds again without turning the TV up to maximum volume. Their birthdays that year were the biggest Eugene had seen for two people in their 80s. I rented the entire community center, hired a bluegrass band they loved from the Saturday market, flew in cousins they hadn't seen in decades. Grandma Nadine wore a salmon-colored dress and danced with everyone. Grandpa Amos sat in the place of honor, nursing one small bourbon, telling the same stories he'd told my whole life. Only this time, nobody minded hearing them again. Some evenings, we drove slow along the Mackenzie River, stopping at fruit stands, buying peaches so ripe the juice ran down our wrists. Other nights, we sat on the deck of the new house watching the same sunset they'd watched from the old porch for 60 years only now. The view included a garden Grandma Nadine planted herself. They never mentioned Tate. They never mentioned Zara. Not once. When the local paper ran a small follow-up story and Blaze's name appeared briefly, Grandpa Amos folded the paper smaller and used it to line the recycling bin. That was the end of it. One night after we got back from Hawaii, Grandma Nadine found me in the kitchen, paying bills online. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking. "You've given us more than we ever gave you," she said quietly. I started to argue. She raised her hand the same way she did when I was 10 and trying to explain unfinished homework. "Just listen," she said. "We're proud of the company, and the money, and all of it." Then she paused. "But we're proudest that you didn't become bitter." That landed deeper than anything Tate or Zara had ever said. I closed the laptop, and we sat together on the porch while the Oregon rain started again, soft, steady, cleansing. With the rest of the world finally quiet, I built something new where the noise used to be. I I turned the basement of the old wooden house into a free coding academy. Every Saturday morning, 20 teenagers show up with secondhand laptops from foster homes, low-income apartments, the local shelter. We teach Python, HTML, how to build tools that solve real problems. Every one of them knows they can message me at midnight if their code won't compile. Grandpa Amos sits in the corner with a thermos of coffee, telling stories about fixing tractors with baling wire. Grandma Nadine hands out cookies, warm from the oven. The kids listen like they're learning secrets, not just about code, but about how people treat each other when no one is watching. Some Sundays, I push Grandma Nadine's wheelchair through the garden path she designed, even though she can still walk and only uses the chair because she likes the slower pace. She points out every new bloom. Grandpa Amos follows behind in his own chair now, telling stories about the summer they planted their first rose bush back in 1962. Secure Nest keeps growing. New contracts, new acquisitions, funding rounds nobody asked for. But the company can run itself for weeks at a time now. My real job is making sure no kid in Eugene ever has to learn alone in an attic again. Here's what I know now. Some lessons cost everything. Tate and Zara learned that money built without roots washes away the first time the river rises. I learned that family is not a blood type. It's a choice made quietly, every single day. By the people who stay, by the people who hand you a slow computer and a jar for your future, who cook dinner for strangers in a garage, who show up when there's nothing to gain. If you stayed with me until this moment, thank you. This story is for every woman who carried more than her share, who worked harder than anyone noticed, who was told to be grateful for scraps. You're not heartless for protecting what you built. You're not selfish for choosing peace. And you're not alone. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because chosen family is real family. And building a life you don't need to escape from, that's the real success.